Okay, the plan today on a season recap episode looking back on the Patriots 2022 season is to actually spend as little time as possible on the Patriots 2022 season. A, because I thought that might delight you, but B, we have a lot to talk about, starting with free agents. Patriots have around 20 free agents who we're going to have to decide to stay or go. That includes Devin McCourty, Jacoby Myers, Jonathan Jones, Damian Harris. I will make a call on every single one of them here in the podcast. Granted, reserve the right to change my mind, but who stays, who goes, as the Patriots will reload with the fourth most cap space in the NFL, something you would know if you've been listening. Also know, if you've been listening, that I think the Patriots would be wise to acquire a big-time receiver via trade because the market is really going to be set by whatever Jacoby Myers gets. And one of those receivers reportedly will be traded, and that's DeAndre Hopkins. That came out today, according to Jordan Schultz. We'll get into Hopkins and how that might work or might not. And then lastly, your mailbag questions. I was really proud of this. We set a record for a podcast response, at least on Twitter. There's some that always come via email or DM. And I didn't get to every question. So if I gave you a like or response via DM, I'll push it to next week. People asking about the draft. I'm not ready for that, not remotely. This week is reserved for looking back on the season and me getting sick, which happens without fail. Body just gives out from just 6-7 day weeks going back to mid-July. That's what's going to happen here. And then we'll get to the draft, I promise, starting in a couple of weeks. But the reason we are looking ahead so quickly and getting all to the fun stuff is because I think we can all agree on one thing about the Patriots 2022 season. And that was at least the last few weeks, maybe even going back further, this season between the team and the fans, and sometimes the team and just the schedule itself, was a relationship that everyone knew was past its expiration date and no one wanted to or couldn't move on from yet. And so it just lives on. It drags on. You have the horrible mistake in Las Vegas, where God knows how many relationships or marriages have been massacred. But having been together a while, you move past it, okay? Christmas Eve comes up, you spend time at, their families, you smile through it, gets off to a horrible start. But then I don't know if it's the eggnog or the football on TV, you start to feel a little bit better. And soon enough, like Reminder Stevenson at the 5-yard line, you vomit down your ugly sweater, and Christmas Eve is another disaster. But you still hang in there because you got New Year's. You've got plans for New Year's Day. And so, like the Patriots against Miami, there's a little flicker of hope. Things go well. Okay, maybe you had concert tickets, you get upgraded, going with another couple. It's new year, new you, new us. Okay, you're in control. But then a week later, back to normal life. Holidays are over. You're freezing your ass in Buffalo, and the Bills remind you that they are Mr. Steal Your Division, and you're out again, not of the wild card round, but of the entire playoff race instead, as Miami takes your place, and you're exactly where you were, where we all thought this team would be before they went to Vegas and took on the Raiders. And here's the thing about that relationship. It stunk, okay? People in the relationship knew it, meaning the coaches and players, people I talked to, and we could all see it on the outside. So we'll see what kind of matchmaker Robert Kraft is, but I think we're all going to be better off in 2023. The Patriots, bottom line, this was an 8-9 team at sub 500 and elite defense, great pass rush, really great pass rush. I tweeted about this today, 32.3% pressure rate on passing downs. They pivoted to more zone coverage the last 5-6 weeks. Again, we talked about this, playing more cover 2 and cover 3 and cover 4, cover 6 the last 6 weeks than any other team in the league. And mind you, they've led the league in man coverage most of the last 2-3 seasons. They pivot to zone and it works. But the uninspired offensive coaching, the fundamental breakdowns in the league where special teams, like we saw in Buffalo, ends that season. So again, we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on this today. The normal format of a post-game episode, the good, the bad, game balls, where we need to talk, NFL film say, we're going to wrap up with that. The first, though, let's talk about Mac, because we've been talking about Mac all season, and we need to punctuate this for him in year 2. For me, we didn't learn a whole lot about Mac that we didn't know last year. And that, to me, says a lot more about his circumstances and that lack of development in his environment than about him. Because what we can say about Mac Jones after year 2 is the exact same after year 1. He's a pocket-bound passer with above-average accuracy and unthreatening arm talent, okay? He processes quickly and operates best over the middle of the field. Pick your metric. They're all going to show it, I promise you. And he wilted under pressure this year, which started in the preseason. You saw it against Carolina and then at Vegas the first time because he's just afraid of that offensive line, which had somewhat of a domino effect. Anytime there was a sign of pressure, he just collapsed. But the other things about this passing attack that were within his control actually stayed constant. You look at his accuracy, okay, his adjusted completion percentage, according to Pro Football Focus, it was 74.7 as a rookie. Okay, how often is he just putting the ball on target, take away throwaways, no spikes, okay, all of that. 74.3% this year. It's a 0.4% difference. Negligible, nada. Then you look at his downfield aggression. Okay, we all know it was super high to start the season. Then it peels back. He also doesn't throw an interception. While he led the league after week 3, he threw one from Halloween through New Year's Day. But downfield on average, he's targeting receivers 8.2 yards downfield. Last year, 8.3. So how accurate he's throwing the ball, how aggressive he is when throwing the ball, both of those stayed the same. Interception rate was up slightly, okay, but he took a couple more sacks, but scrambled more and fumbled less. So to me, when he's completing 65.2% of his passes for 2,997 yards, 14 touchdowns, 11 picks, that mostly says it all. But I think when you compare those raw statistics to his rookie year, and they all scream regression, it's a little bit closer to the middle than what we'll see. So with Mac, no big proclamations here. I just think as far as any sort of criticism or applause or defense, I'm coming down the middle. Again, the offensive coaching stuff remains constant. My mind has not changed now that they played a couple more games. Because as we just said, a bad relationship that's past its expiration date doesn't get any better the further you go past that expiration date. All right, I mentioned we're going to do the good, the bad, what would NFL film stay. This is for the whole season. Okay, the Patriots lose 35-23. That came down to 2 kickoff returns going back for a touchdown. The Patriots allowed half of the kick return touchdowns in the entire league. 3 out of the 6 belong to them. That's what that game was about. Josh Allen being a better quarterback, the Bills having the deeper roster. It was a simple, straightforward story. So for this season, here was the good. And you can find a ton more numbers, breakdowns, bostonherald.com, where I also wrote about the season as opposed to just this last game. 4 guys I want to highlight. Matt Judon, career year. You could talk about the 15.5 sacks or the 13 quarterback hits that didn't result in sacks or the 24 hurries. He was a monster. 4 straight Pro Bowls, and the Patriots did an excellent job of maximizing his rush, not only just to get him pressure in terms of the alignment where they could automatically generate a one-on-one. You know, forget the double teams. We'll overload that side. You can't possibly devote 2 guys to Judon because someone else gets free, or post-snap, running him on stunts that also got him free. And then towards the second half of the season, as Josh Uche also came on, he dropped into coverage 3 times as much, and that screwed up with the protections as well to free Uche and Wise and Christian Barmore when he finally came back. None of that is possible, though, unless Matt Judon has another career, which obviously he did. Reminder Stevenson, breakout star this season. He wore down over the last 3 weeks, as you would have heard, after that Bengals game, and I'm looking at the yards after contact going, this is not him. There's something up. And yes, he was listed on the injury report with an ankle injury, but he had played in Vegas. He had played probably his best game until the lateral in Las Vegas. And then suddenly this guy's a shell of himself against the Bengals. Yes, the injury factored in, but that's just wear and tear. Again, you're talking about almost triple the touches for Stevenson compared to his rookie year. And he's in the top 10 of the whole freaking league in touches, leading the Patriots in catches and obviously rushing. But up until those 3 weeks, you could make a Pro Bowl case for Rhamondre Stevenson. He was that good. Mike Onwenu, right guard. We talked about him a little bit, not a whole lot. He's a guy that is the only player on the roster that could have challenged Stevenson for best offensive player. He gave up his first sack in the entire season in week 17 against Miami. And it was right at the end where Mac takes that intentional sack, 4th down, they're trying to run clock. He was outstanding. And this is a guy who, honestly, I would argue, I just mentioned the sack, only sack allowed this year. He was a better run blocker than pass protector coming into the season. You might flip that now. And this is a dude who is 350 pounds, wears it, moves well. But that's how good he's been. He's an all-around guard, a dominant one at that. There's been no drop-off from Shaq Mason to Mike Onwenu. Last guy I want to highlight in the good section, Kyle Duggar. Let's just list off the numbers, okay? 78 tackles, 8 pass breakups, 3 interceptions, 2 touchdowns, a forced fumble, and a sack. Good luck making a list of a more impactful safety. Forget all the thumping he did against the run game than Kyle Duggar. This dude is on a Pro Bowl trajectory and really kept them alive, of course, against Las Vegas. And then with the touchdown against Miami down the stretch, playing his best. And that's what you need. As for the bad, Isaiah Wynn, total debacle. Disaster, moving to right tackle. He was uninterested. He had 4 straight games with the sack and a penalty, benched multiple times, shelved on IR. It would be a shock to see him back. Nelson Aguilar, little spoiler alert for the free agency talk. His numbers fell down even further from last year. I thought he would rebound. I was completely wrong. He even fell out of the receiver rotation and didn't have a catch the last 3-4 weeks. Jonnu Smith, he had 27 catches. How many do you remember? Because honestly, I watched all of them. I charted all of them. I have the routes down, the down and distance, the formation, the personnel groupings. There are not many. I could probably say half off the top of my head. And his poor awareness and route running and spotty fundamentals contributed to a lot of, as we highlighted after the Bengals game, to the poor route spacing downfield. Okay. He's going to be back next season because of his contract. But 27 catches, 245 yards, and 0 touchdowns. Okay. 3 fewer than Kyle Duggar. Not great. Last one on the bad, punting, Jake Bailey, Mike Pilardi, according to some metrics, worst punters in the entire league this season. Okay. And Bailey also capped that year with a suspension. We're not going to cover a whole lot here, but that hurt them on kickoffs. And the Patriots don't need to cover kicks in Buffalo or in any of the weeks leading up to that if he's healthy. He wasn't. How much that affected him before he went on IR mid-November, I don't know. But what I know is he stunk up until that point, worst year of his career, and Michael Pilardi picked up right where he left off with very, very similar numbers, touchback percentage, net yards. I think it was around 37. Just, you can't have it. That dragged down their special teams almost as much as allowing 3 kick return touchdowns. Okay, what would NFL film say? Again, real quick on the Buffalo finale. Obviously, this is all about the Bills. It's Damar Hamlin. It's the vibe, all the chills that we got, watching them come out of the tunnel with the flags. The kick return touchdown gets replayed 3 times in slow-mo. And for people, again, who are new to the pod, what would NFL film say? We're inventing, this fake hour-long documentary in the season. How would they portray it? Of course, the Patriots get back into it. They show Mac Jones' touchdown pass, Jacoby Myers. You get like 6 different angles of this thing, dragging the toe, survives review. He has it. Then he hits Parker, then he hits Parker again. Patriots are knocking on the door. But ultimately, the NFL films chalks this up to the Bills were never going to lose 6 days after potentially losing Damar Hamlin on the field. And so you see the Josh Allen plays, you go to the kick return touchdown in the second half, and the Bills getting those interceptions to put them away. From the Patriots' perspective, Devin McCourty and Matthew Slater snip it to their press conferences. And you admit they have some unfinished business. And you get a shot, I think, of Gillette Stadium at the very end. And Gillette's still very much under construction. And the obvious metaphor is that the Patriots are very much the same thing. And then on to 2023, when that stadium will be complete, and perhaps so, the Patriots return to contention. Okay, as promised, on to the fun stuff. This podcast also unofficially brought to you by Heineken 0.0, which has been helping me through dry January. Going well, going strong. But I got to tell you, dry January comes around at the worst time every year, which, of course, is always the same time every year. But for obvious reasons related to, Damar Hamlin, among a lot of other things going on in the world. Just great timing. Anyway, DeAndre Hopkins. So according to Jordan Schultz, the Cardinals are planning to trade him as they clean house. Hopkins is going to turn 31 in June. He has 2 years left on his deal. He would carry a cap hit of $19.45 million next season, second most among wide receivers behind only Tyreek Hill. And then it's just under $15 million in 2024, when I think you could have the cap getting close to, but not right at, $300 million. So I think that number is going to be until 2025. But again, we're getting up there. The thing to know about Hopkins, who, again, suspended last year, missed the first 8 games, still had 64 catches, 717 yards, 3 touchdowns. He had 96 targets. Pretty sure that led the league over the second half of the year, is that he is a no trade clause. So before we jump into any of the how or the when or the why, nothing, zero, nada happens unless DeAndre Hopkins says, okay, yeah, okay, there. So he'll be involved in these trade talks, I have to assume, between ownership and all the different trade partners, which are going to come after him, because the cap is going up. Some teams, particularly GMs that are a little bit on the hot seat, are just going to say, we'll spend now and deal with the problem later. That kind of mindset is eventually going to get you into some trouble, which is why I've said this for months now. I think the Patriots are going to spend. I don't think it will be anything close to what they did 2 years ago. And that's where there's also a hang up here, because the Patriots historically, and this is our best guide, what they've done before for what they're going to do next, do not pay a premium for wide receivers. They might surrender an asset, like a first-round pick for Brandon Cooks or a second-round pick for Wes Welker, but they don't invest significant cap space in wide receivers. They didn't do it for Cooks. They didn't do it for Wes Welker, which is why Welker left. They didn't do it for Randy Moss, even after Randy Moss set the single-season record for receiving touchdowns, okay? So they're not going to do it for DeAndre Hopkins, who turns 31 in June. Now, of course, Belichick loves DeAndre Hopkins. And if you didn't hear it in the press conference leading up to that Cardinals game, when he called Hopkins, quote, every bit as good as anybody I've ever coached against, and drew a comparison to Chris Carter, there was a snippet, shout out HBO's Hard Knocks, which, again, the Cardinals, like, the Colts did this. Some teams have different attitudes. Even if I would be more media friendly on the inside of a building because of obviously my media experience, I do not understand the motivation behind letting a camera crew in for an entire freaking season. Anyway, thanks to that camera crew, we got a glimpse of Belichick talking to DeAndre Hopkins before that game. Belichick told him, I'm glad we only have to play you every 4 years. But what a career you're having. You missed half the season, still going to lead the league in receiving. Hopkins says, I love you, man. Pause for the, Belichick said, you too, you too. Okay, so let's dream. You're in charge of the Patriots front office. We're working together. Should the Patriots try to trade for DeAndre Hopkins? Abso-freaking-lutely. We already talked about the cap space, the effective cap space in terms of they have to fill out a whole roster, and you don't know who the players, with all the free agents you have now, 40 through 53 might be. But say you fill those spots with at least minimum slots, the Patriots should be around $45.46 million, according to Over the Cap. Okay. So we talked about Hopkins' contract. His number would be $19.45 million, eating up close to, but not half of, 45.46, which is what the Patriots are looking at, according to Over the Cap. Their draft capital, because again, if you're going to get Hopkins, you got to give something out. And the Cardinals, because they're rebuilding, are probably going to want picks, is among the top 8 teams in the league. That's not, your number of first or second round picks or day 1 and day 2 picks. It's your total capital you're looking at. So the Patriots don't have as much money they can move around. They might have to ask Hopkins, or would want to ask Hopkins, because again, they don't pay top dollar for receivers, to lower that figure. The question is, does DeAndre Hopkins want to come here? Now, before we get to that, let's look at his other options, because of course, he's going to look at this in context, so should we. I would expect, based on cap space and the situation of these franchises, that the following teams who either have more cap space or better draft capital than the Patriots are at least going to make a phone call. And those teams are, and there's not a big list. Again, the Patriots' 4th most cap space, top 8 in terms of draft capital. These teams are better in one of those 2 areas. The Falcons, the Bears, the Colts, and the Steelers. A couple of those teams we know will pay top dollar for a receiver based on very recent team history. Now, another team I didn't mention that is above the Patriots in both draft capital and cap space, I think we can rule out, because that's the Texans, and I don't think DeAndre has fond memories of his last year or 2 there. Other teams I would be wary of, not because they have more cap space or draft capital than the Patriots, but because they're at least in the neighborhood and they can move their books a little bit better than the Patriots can in terms of prorating guaranteed or money that's flexible on their books now and pushing it into the future. If it's guaranteed now, it's locked in, or if it's a signing bonus, nothing the Patriots can do about it. These teams are the Chiefs, the Packers, the Lions, the Ravens, and this is my personal favorite on the outside for Hopkins, is the Giants. Because general manager Joe Shane was in Buffalo when the Bills traded for Stephon Diggs. And he saw the power of pairing Diggs, a verified number 1, with an up-and-coming quarterback. Say we will about Daniel Jones. I'm not a big Daniel Jones guy, but that makes all the sense in the world to me, looking at the Giants and what they might need, depending on whatever the situation is there, of course, with Kenny Galladay's contract. So the question you need to ask before, again, we get into how he would fit in the Patriots and how much cap space do they have left and where would he be in the offense is, will they be the top bidder? Because they need to outbid, most likely, or at least half of this list, the Falcons, Bears, Colts, Steelers, Chiefs, Packers, Lions, Ravens, and Giants. Okay? Take half of those teams off. We're probably forgetting or not including some. The Saints are always somehow in the mix, even though they have no picks and no current cap space, but all the flexibility in the world in terms of their future books. And we know they're going to push money forward because, okay, let's say the Patriots are the top bidder, and let's get back to something I raised before. Are they an attractive enough destination for DeAndre Hopkins? Because as much as Belichick showered him with affection, and not just in the press conference where we know that happens all the time, but on the field, if you're Hopkins, you look at this team and go, okay, who's my quarterback? It's Mac Jones. All right, like he played fine in Arizona. And I think that impression is important in person. Mac was also, as we know, having a fit on the field, going to and from the sidelines, which is really the lasting memory of that whole Monday night game. Last year, because of the quarterback situation, some uncertainty, Odell Beckham Jr. told the world that, hey, if Brady was there, I probably would have gone to New England. And maybe it was lip service. I asked him during the Super Bowl Zoom. That's what he said. But the Patriots are also 25-26 the last 3 years. You can't keep having these seasons 8-9, 10-7, 7-9, and not expect some of the sheen to come off Belichick and the brand of New England. That's 3 years, 25-26. So what is the big sell to DeAndre Hopkins? Obviously, it starts with Belichick. It starts with money. You say, okay, bring your $19.45 million cap hit with you. We'll fit you in. We'll move some other stuff around. Well, who's the OC? I mean, I'm not as high on Kingsbury being an option as some because people trace him all the way back to New England. Look, if we paired people with future jobs based on jobs they had 19 years ago, I am ready to be in line as a babysitter and a little league umpire anytime. Put me in there. I don't think that's going to happen for me. All right. Kingsbury, being the Patriots' backup quarterback in 2003, does not qualify him for being their offensive coordinator in 2023. Now, Kingsbury is from an air raid system. Perhaps Belichick's a little bit more open to adjusting his system. We'll see. That's a different conversation. But the other name that I think we all agree is a little bit more likely, even if it's less than 50%, is Bill O'Brien. And if Bill O'Brien is here, DeAndre Hopkins is not coming. So between the bidders, the available cap space, and draft capital in the situation, in the conversation with Hopkins, who again has a no trade clause, these are all things to consider. I don't want to be a wet blanket. I don't want to put out the embers and the fire and the excitement and the enthusiasm, but you just have to think through all of that before we get to, oh, he's definitely going to be here. Someone announced it. I think it's going to take a little bit of time, and I don't think it's going to happen, but we're going to have fun and we're going to dream.
Hey guys, a quick break for a holiday gift from me to you. It's a reminder that BetOnline remains your number one source for all your sports betting needs this season. NFL, college football, bowl season, esports, and the end of the World Cup. You'll find the latest odds on all of those, plus team matchup info, player news, game trends, all at betonline.ag, where BetOnline features live betting, free contests, and live scores for any sport or game. BetOnline is the fastest and the easiest way to bet all your favorite leagues and events, so head online to betonline.ag to join and receive your 50% welcome bonus with your first deposit. Make sure to use the promo code CLNS50, that's CLNS50, to receive your reward at BetOnline, where the game starts.
Okay, let's get on to the free agents. Talked about it, just around 20 for the Patriots. We're going to run through these really quickly. Again, I reserve the right to revisit these and change my mind. Nelson Aguilar, 31 catches, 362 yards, 2 touchdowns. Those will be the last 2 touchdowns he scores in a Patriots uniform. I would be shocked if he is back. Jacoby Myers, this is the tough one. Myers has led the Patriots in receiving, as we know, for the last 3 seasons. This year, that meant 67 catches, 804 yards, 6 touchdowns. 6 touchdowns for the guy who just waited a freaking half an NFL career and lifetime to score his first. I am leaning 60-40 Jacoby comes back because he is on the record multiple times that he wants to stay in New England. He has the right agent to make that happen. Drew Rosenhaus, who is the same agent for guys like Judon and Devon Godchow and John Smith, a couple of whom, not Judon, you could argue got overpaid to come here and make this happen. Rosenhaus, of course, represented Antonio Brown when that deal went down with New England 3 years ago. I'm just saying everything is aligned. Jacoby wants to stay and make a home here. The trouble will be when you look at other teams with cap space who might be interested in acquiring someone who's kind of a culture driver, in addition to being a good receiver and someone who can help elevate your program as it's rising, I would wonder if the Texans make a call. They have more money. They could pull him away and say, not only you'll start, but you'll be our number one. Come help us build a program here, have long-term security, build your house. Here's your 4-year deal. He's only going to be 27 around next year. Does Jacoby want to do that, given the uncertainty around quarterback situation? What do they do with that number 2 pick? Who knows? But that's where you start to look at front offices that value the same things that you do. And Caserio was still here when Jacoby came in. That might worry me among a couple other teams. The Raiders are going to have cap space, but I think they're pretty set at receiver, depending on, Matt Collins for agency, but they need to invest in that defense, and they know that. Damian Harris, he had 106 carries this year, missed 6 games, 462 yards, 3 touchdowns. I think he's gone. I don't think there's any reason for the Patriots to bring him back. You've got Kevin Harris waiting in the wings. Pierre Strong, reminder, Stevenson is breaking tackles at a higher rate than Damian Harris and has each of his 2 seasons in the NFL. He's going to be 26, and he is going to be entering a market flush with starting running back. So if he does come back, it is on a team-friendly deal, probably for about 2 years, at which point, they'll have some decisions to make, regarding Strong and Kevin Harris. And look, they're not banking on Kevin Harris, 6th-round pick, to be a contributor in 2023. But you project out and say he'll make the year 2 leap, certain improvements, we can trust him more in pass protection, things like that. Makes Damian Harris expendable. You just need to fill that RB4 spot if they come to terms with Stevenson. Now we're getting ahead of ourselves, but this is the way they think. I just don't think Harris needs to fit into their immediate picture or has much of a future here, where the rest of the guys in the roster, a couple years younger or 3 years younger, obviously do. Jonathan Jones, he's going to turn 30 in September. He, in a way, age aside, and age obviously being a huge factor in free agency, is hitting at the right time. Guy had 4 interceptions, 1 he returned for a touchdown, 3 forced fumbles, 69 tackles. He can play a little safety, nickel, outside corner. I don't think Jonathan Jones is back. This is a guy that I think Las Vegas, again, Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler running the show out there, target in a big way because of that versatility, knows the system, culture driver, proven player, tackles well. The Patriots don't pay for old corners. We just went through this with Stephon Gilmore, and to a degree, although J.C. Jackson's certainly not old, in the physical prime of his career, and there were other considerations there, they didn't want to pay him either. Jonathan Jones is not going to command money that Gilmore and J.C. Jackson did, but I think when they look at the landscape, depending on what the corner market does, and it cooled a little bit last year in free agency, it came under numbers that were expected, including for J.C. Jackson. I just don't think the Patriots give him a deal that he should want at this point in his career, understanding this is his last big payday. And if he has coaches and a system in place that he trusts, yeah, he maybe he goes out to Las Vegas and reunites with some old teammates. Deron Harmon, for one, if he's still there at safety, I think it'd be an option. Devin McCourty, he'll be 36 in August. All the, no reporting here, but the feeling you get around the building, the way he handled those last couple of games, and we'll just package Matthew Slater in right now. I think this is it. I think they head on out, understanding they just went through a bridge year. There's no guarantee that next year isn't another bridge year for the Patriots, even if they get to the wild card round or the divisional round. Like, Devin's shoulders are a mess. He's had something like 3 or 4 shoulder surgeries. He's stayed healthy. I think he's very happy to go out on top, obviously work with CBS during the bye week on the NFL Today, sees all the success and enjoyment his twin brother Jason's having in retirement. Matthew Slater's talked about retirement each of the last 3 seasons. I think they go out together. And if I had to guess, again, this is all speculative, Slater comes back as some sort of team chaplain, is still very much around the team because he has set firm roots in New England with all of his kids in school. Though I can tell you also Devin will at least be around New England until June because his kids are very much in school too. So staying in the secondary, Jabril Peppers, I think he's back. I think he understands, having gone from Cleveland to New York to New England, the importance of fit. I don't think he's played himself into some big contract where the Patriots very much got him at a discount last year coming off a torn ACL. The system fit is so obvious. And I think that matters to players later on in their careers more than it does early on. You can play anywhere. It doesn't matter who your teammates with. It's about you. It's about making money. I don't know if he wants to sell down his personal life, but if he's content living where he is, wherever that is around Foxborough, I think he comes back on a deal that's probably friendly for the team. And if Devin retires, you say, hey, here's an opportunity. Like our most common defensive personnel grouping was with 3 safeties last year. We'll plug you in with Phillips and Duggar. Let's keep this thing rolling. He just needs to play a little bit more under control. Mac Wilson, I think, is gone. That reportedly has already been decided. He totally disappeared once the Patriots decided Juwan Bentley would be their lone linebacker in dime personnel groupings. He had a sack and a half, a forced fumble, and 36 tackles. Raekwon McMillan, I think, is back. I think he got better as the year went on. He played and rotated a little bit with Jelani Tavai when they were in some nickel groupings with Bentley. He's a guy they trust. I think he's also someone who probably wants to find a home and stay here. And I think they actually extended him. No, forgive me. That was last year. So, yeah, he's coming up. I think he'll be back. Carl Davis, this is a question mark. He had 3 penalties in a very limited amount of playing time. Also a couple run stuffs. He's only playing when the Patriots go to their base 3-4 defense or if it's in goal line. He's someone that I talked to at the locker room clean out on Monday and definitely appreciates the longevity of his career. Doesn't know what's going to come up next. I think it's just kind of going to go where the wind blows or as far as the market goes. I don't think the Patriots move on him immediately unless he wants to stay. He is happy in New England. Structure of the program is very similar to what he endured at Iowa, which, look, that's a long time ago in college, but he's drawn that parallel as he did in 2020 when he got here. Then when we were chatting in his locker on Monday. So I think it's something he appreciates, kind of the structure and the discipline, the rigidity, let's just call it, of the Patriots program. Matthew Slater said is going to retire. Daniel Ekwale, I think he gets paid elsewhere. It's really good, surprisingly good as an interior pass rusher and a run stuffer. He had 3 run stuffs this year, which is, like I said, is right up there with just about anybody else. Also had a pass breakup. I think you see some 4-down team, a la the Jets. I'm not saying necessarily the Jets, the Colts, Houston, until we'll see what they do post Lovie Smith, that you plug him in a defensive tackle on 3rd down and you just let him go to work. Isaiah Wynn, gone. Yadni Kajust, I think they'll offer and bring back. He's a known commodity. You can never have too many offensive tackles. He got benched for Connor McDermott. I think they would love to have Connor McDermott back. McDermott's 30. I think Belichick said, quote, thank God they had Connor McDermott at a press conference in the last couple of weeks. He'll be back. Kajust, I think, too, at least to give him a shot. Marcus Cannon, I think, is done. He had a concussion, never came back this season. Joe Cardona, rock solid. Did have 2 false start penalties, which you don't really see from long snappers. He'll be 31. James Ferentz, look, the Patriots are always going to pick up the phone for James Ferentz. He's not going far. If he's playing in the league, it'll be in New England. This could be a case where they call him in October. I think, sure, we'll see him at some point in 2023, but right away, probably not. Joanne Williams, as we round out here with some special teamers and some exclusive rights free agents. I don't think Joanne Williams is back. I think he'll get a tryout with the team maybe later in the summer. He's dealing with injuries. The fit just isn't happening. It's not working. The Patriots have given him more than a shot. They've replenished their corner depth with Marcus Jones and Jack Jones and Jalen Mills. That's if Jonathan Jones doesn't come back. And, of course, they could go back in the draft. I just don't see it. Cody Davis is a little tougher one than you would think. He's 34. You would say, oh, you don't need the special teamers. And then you remember, again, worst special teams in the league. Belichick, though, was over the top in his praise for Cody Davis. I think they gave him a 1-year deal to come back post-injury. He had 6 tackles in 6 games. He's only 34. I think they can make it work. Michael Pilardi, replacement punter, gone. Christian Wilkerson, Quinn Nordine, exclusive rights free agents, meaning they're basically going nowhere, but I have to include them in the list because it says they're free agents. I think they get flyers. And Quinn Nordine, depending on his development, should certainly give Nick Folk a run for his money in training camp next year, but we'll see what happens with him. Miles Bryant is their only restricted free agent. Yes, I think Miles Bryant is back. He's the kind of player they really value. 1 interception, 70 tackles for Miles Bryant, who was a pain in my ass trying to chart all the defense because he would flip between nickelback and safety so seamlessly mid drives. And I'm trying to chart, is this 3 safety nickel? Is it 3 cornerback nickel? But he's a smart guy, the exact type of player that you value. And I think so long as Miles Bryant is somewhere between the 43rd and 53rd player in the roster, you're fine. Starting corner, as he's been the last couple of weeks, even at nickel, not great. If Marcus Jones takes that nickel job, I think they're in great hands. But of course, it just depends on who's outside, which is a question for free agency and beyond. Okay, let's get to the mailbag questions and get out of here. we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So like I said, about half of the questions, if I didn't get to you here, then we will shortly soon. That's how you know it's getting late, because I just said shortly soon. The redundancy is strong with this one. Okay, Chris on Twitter says, how quickly do the Patriots make a move for an offensive coordinator? They don't have a lot of time to wait around, and I'm assuming Kraft won't want to either. This, of course, depends on their targets. I have no doubts that Belichick has been at least thinking about, before he goes to bed, those type of options during the season, or at least on his drive home. We've all been talking about Bill O'Brien for over a month. If I had to put odds on this, and I'm not going to give you an exact number, but I would say I would take the field at this point over Bill O'Brien. And this is something that I have pivoted on recently, but I think, as I think we discussed last week, it has as much to do with O'Brien being in the building and perhaps a threat to Belichick as his successor, as Belichick wanting to lead the franchise exactly as he wants, with his son still on staff. And I'm not sure that happens with O'Brien. O'Brien also is someone that is very different from the person who came into the building 10, 12 years ago, cycling through the Penn State job, then down to Houston, had issues with players there, then goes to Alabama. It doesn't seem Alabama's offered him a contract extension. I know the fan base isn't all hot over Bill O'Brien right now, but if it's not Bill O'Brien, then I think the Patriots are really sifting through their options. And I understand there's some sort of urgency as you see all these interviews. But as we know, it's always more complicated in New England than sometimes it needs to be. And that's because of titles, where if this becomes an official offensive coordinator, the Patriots are going to have to adhere to the Rooney Rule. Interview X amount of minority candidates. Same for the quarterback's coach job, if that's going to shift away from Joe Judge. And so there's a lot in play here. I don't know how quickly it is. I would say probably by the end of the month. But again, it's the Patriots. You might bring in a coach as a senior offensive advisor, and they take the de facto OC role away from Matt Patricia, who gets moved to defense if, let's say, Gerard Mayo leaves, which we don't know if that'll happen. But those are all the things in play here. So I would give this a little bit of time and not expect an instant answer, because the Patriots are going to parse through this and then also check all the boxes they've added to the list because they want to do it their way, as opposed to adhere to certain league rules and restrictions. The Water Boys Pod on Twitter writing in, what specific players should the Patriots target in free agency / trade market? Mike McGlinchey at right tackle would make a ton of sense. I agree. Mike McGlinchey is about the only elite offensive tackle still scheduled to hit free agency. Now, that is good news if you were running the Patriots in Madden. You just give him as much as he wants and you sign him. That's bad news for the Patriots in real life, because they're going to have a lot of bidders, of course, for Mike McGlinchey, who's going to be in his mid-20s, playing very well for San Francisco, and I think is a player who, is well regarded both as a pass protector and as run blocker. So you don't have any immediate concerns there. And the Patriots will pay for offensive tackles. It's just, how high does that price get? So if you're the team like the Texans or the Bears, who I think are about to set a record for amount of cap space in an offseason, maybe they throw a bag at Mike McGlinchey and he just goes to Chicago and doesn't give two thoughts about it. So beyond that, we'll have a list of players coming up in this podcast. This is more about in-house free agents. The receiver market, I can tell you, is pretty depressed. Jacoby Myers might be the best receiver there. So again, they're going to go via trade. I think if they're going to add a big name, positionally, I think they would probably go back into the draft for a corner, because you've got two there that are up and coming. You can afford to buy some time to let someone else develop, or maybe add one sort of veteran. But it's a little tricky because, of course, Jack Jones, as we've seen with the suspension, is not someone you trust entirely with his decision-making. So we'll see. I think it's easier to say positionally they should target McGlinchey or guys like him in free agency. The problem is, as I mentioned, he's the only one still in that category. So I say yes. It's just going to be, of course, a matter of price. AJ, what does Mac need to work on most in the offseason? This is tough because, again, I don't think we know a whole lot more about Mac in year 2 than we did in year 1. And his mechanics, for the most part, save for the Raiders game, are pretty clean. I think the arm talent isn't going to change a whole lot if his mechanics won't and shouldn't, frankly. So then you're talking about things like throwing off platform or performance under pressure. And I think those things are areas where he could really work on. I mean, some areas he's already elite in terms of touch passing, accuracy over the middle. The decision-making at some point, you just are who you are. It can get better, but he's been really stable in that department senior year of college and first 2 years in the NFL. Some, of course, are boneheaded mistakes. Everyone has them. But his interception rate, turnover-worthy plays in Pro Football Focus, 2.7% this year, 2.5% last year. I really look at the performance under pressure and the off-platform throws. So those throws on the run, those throws falling back, what can he do to elevate himself there? Because those are the areas of the game that either this season were really lacking in terms of under pressure, or just overall, when you look at the gap between him and the guys in the fringe top 10 and then inside the top 10, can kind of create on their own with those type of throws. Scott wants to know, the NFL schedule seems to favor having the Patriots at home for games during the holiday season. Since 2016, Scott did his research, there has only been one game played on the road during this time, way back on New Year's Day after the 2016 season. What gives? I lobby the league personally every year to be at home for Christmas Eve and New Year's Day. No, I don't know, Scott. I think these are one of those things that we look at and attribute some sort of reason to. In reality, there's randomness. I mean, you go through the NFL schedule every single year, and the disparity from a competitive, equity standpoint, there's just huge holes where teams like the Patriots are facing, 4 opponents coming off of a longer week than they are. But the Patriots have to travel 2,000 miles more than the Jets. Like these things have a way of happening where they can't align everything in the schedule to be equitable or reasonable. And over this stretch, of course, it's probably better for the Patriots to be at home over the holidays. But I don't think there's anything really to it. If you moved it back from 2016 to 2012, I'm sure this would balance out a little bit more, maybe 2008. I think the Patriots have just gotten lucky. It also probably, if you look at least this year, 3 of their first 4 games are on the road. So the back half of your schedules can be backloaded with home games. And you go back to 2020, I know the home opener was in 19, both of those were at home, 18 was too. So this is kind of hurting that argument, but you get my point. Like at some point, the home games have to come. It looks like the Patriots have just gotten lucky. And if you look through the first half or 4 games of those schedule, you're running out of away games to slot in the back half of the schedule. Good band -C. I have no idea what that stands for. Who do the Patriots miss the most this year? Josh McDaniels, Dante Scarnecchia, or Ernie Adams? I'm going to rule out Ernie Adams. Ernie Adams, as far as the jobs that we know that he did, it's still shrouded in mystery 2 years into retirement. In 2020, not making the best challenge suggestions to Belichick, who really struggled in those areas that season. So as far as the on-field measurable performance of Ernie Adams, not a whole lot. Dante Scarnecchia and Josh McDaniels is really tough because, of course, both of their jobs were replaced by Matt Patricia. I'm going to go big picture here and just say Josh McDaniels, not because I think he elevates the offense in a way that would have made it totally different. The talent is the talent. I think, of course, you'd love to have Dante Scarnecchia, one of the greatest assistants in NFL history, but this offense lacked direction. It lacked purpose. It lacked an identity. And I think for an experienced offensive coordinator, A, Josh is going to bring that to the table, and B, he's going to bring a lot of problem solving. I said this on the podcast before the season started. What they're going to miss is what Josh McDaniels missed when he first took this job. And it's the wealth of experience that tells you when this happens, you can solve it that way. Or when this crisis arises within the offense or receivers are asking for targets, this is how you handle them. That's the reason the Patriots got pantsed. And let's just talk about Super Bowl 42 against the Giants, 17-14. They didn't have a solution for all the pressures. Brady and McDaniels are going back and forth. Years later, they can say, hey, we did this in that game in 2008 or 9 or 11 or 12. Okay. Patricia doesn't have all of that experience to lean on as a problem solver. I think for all the things that did come up for the Patriots, having McDaniels at the top would have a trickle-down effect to certain assistants and the way they want to run things and eliminate some of those problems. And he would have better solutions than they did, where on a lot of these games, the game plans were bad, but the lack of in-game adjustments in the back half of the schedule hurt them just as much. All right, let's roll through the last 3. Paul says, will the Pats go after a shutdown corner in the offseason, free agent or draft pick? Like I said, I think it's more likely to be a draft pick than a free agent. S2015, it sounds like the Pats will be spending money this year. What is the biggest position of need they can fill through free agency? We already hit on this, the position and the name. It's offensive tackle. Again, Isaiah Wynn was an unmitigated, uninterested disaster. Okay. 6 sacks allowed, 8 or 9 penalties. And that's a guy who didn't finish the season. Okay. Second worst in both of those categories, by the way, to Trent Brown, who, again, took 12 penalties and I think allowed 8.5 sacks, but at least was out there. Okay. And could spread out those penalties and sacks and hurries allowed and a couple of run stuffs over the entire schedule. Isaiah Wynn just can't have it. So Mike McGlinchey would be the name to know. We'll have a couple more in the next podcast. At BB's Burner, hello, Bill, wants to know, what is our biggest need for next season? Our biggest need being the Patriots. It's offensive tackle and offensive coaching, really. Again, it goes back to Patricia and Judge. We're not going to belabor this. I've said it before. It's not interesting. It's not fun. We can all see it. Same thing as I led with the relationship. It's past its expiration date, at least the season over, but they need a new system. Not a new system, I take that back. They need a new leader of their offensive staff in place of, in terms of Matt Patricia, and on the field, they need new players at offensive tackle because it's just not good enough. And you watch, if you watch the season, you know that. And that's exactly what it is. There are other areas of need. Maybe you disagree, but you're wrong. So that'll do it. So next time we're back, we'll have the mailbag questions I did not get to. We will also have a guest, take a little peek at free agency. And I think we're mostly done with the 2022 season. We might parse out a couple more things, but otherwise we are looking ahead and expect more news on the coaching front to come in the next couple of days, and hopefully some broken by yours truly. Until then, we'll see you next time.